Hello and welcome to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends. I'm your host, Bill McMorris, filling in for Leon Wolf.
Actually, you guys, screw it. This is Joe Cunningham, and I'm going to be here tonight because I am taking over the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends. Welcome to BATF. This is Joe Cunningham here with Jeff Blahar of the Ace of Spades Edition Desk. Good evening, Jeff.
I don't know what's going on here. I have a gun to my head. I have to accede to all demands. Please forgive me.
Joining us as well, Neal Dewing of the Federalist. Hello, Neal.
So, Joe, you're in charge and not Bill.
It's better for everybody.
No, I'm totally on board.
And we have joining us as a special guest tonight, Kyle Foley of OUTSET magazine. Good evening, Kyle. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm in power now, which makes everything a whole lot better. So we have decided to transition away from the Leon Wolf era. God bless the new editor-in-chief and supreme dictator of RedState. His responsibilities have become a little too great, and so he handed power over to Bill McMorris. I, for one, say nay. And so the new show is going to be me and the rest of these clowns, and Kyle Foley is welcome to join us whenever we deign to give him an invitation.
Hey, Joe, I'm going to make a plea for mercy. I know you want to execute Bill McMorris at the public square tomorrow at dawn, but I'm asking you to reconsider and allow him to rejoin the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends, if only as a guest. Please, please think it out and give it some time.
I don't have to condemn Bill McMorris to death because he is sentenced to a much harsher fate. He has to live in Washington, D.C.
I thought you were going to just stop with life, and I would have bought that. But hey,
I thought you were going to say he has to keep coming on the show.
That is the second punishment. In the meantime, as we are waiting Bill to come back, assuming that I did not permanently eject him from the call, as Jeff says I did the last time I ejected somebody. Let's see. What were we going to talk about tonight? The coup has left me totally mind blank. Oh, I know. We are going to start. First of all, this is a bloody, violent coup.
Yeah.
Welcome to Joe Cunningham's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends.
It can't be.
Bill, I pled for clemency on your behalf, and so we've allowed you back in. But,
This is a brokered convention. I'm going to take all my followers and, you're fucking dead.
All right, now before we have this brokered convention, allow me to give my pitch to you guys. We are going to make the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends great again. Who's with me?
I'm on board, totally.
Brokered convention settled.
Terrible. Ugh.
So, as we were saying before Bill decided to butt into the conversation, the big news this week is that Neal Dewing is being forced to accept Ted Cruz as the candidate of choice to defeat Donald Trump. So we are going to turn to Neal. And Neal, first of all, Marco Rubio has dropped out, and we are having to accept Ted Cruz. How do you feel about this?
We don't have to accept Ted Cruz as a person to accept the reality that Ted Cruz is the only remaining viable non-Trump option. I will not actively support Ted Cruz. I don't intend to lend my voice to getting him the nomination. Nobody would believe me anyway, so I'm just going to be silent for the most part. I will continue to call him names and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think I'm pretty broken up about Rubio. And I have to say I'm filled with spirit of vengeance, a little bit of that going on. Maybe that'll ease off in a little while. Maybe.
It hurts. I know it hurts, especially during the dry season for you, the season of Lent, which, luckily for you, is only going on for a couple more weeks. So just hang on there, Neal. Things will get better. Let's take it over to our guest for the evening, Kyle Foley of OUTSET magazine, who is a Florida guy himself and I believe was also a pretty big booster of Marco Rubio. Kyle, what do you see as Rubio drops out as kind of making moves to endorse Ted Cruz? What's your take on how the election is going to go from here?
He's going to endorse Ted Cruz, and I'm not going to be happy. It's going to hurt a little bit, but he's going to do it. It'll go to a brokered convention. Ted Cruz will come out. Again, I won't be happy, but it's better than Donald Trump. So at this point, I kind of just have to take it and go with it. But it'll be within the week. He'll come out and endorse him.
So you are pretty sure that it is going to come to a brokered convention. You don't see there's really any way that, or do you believe that there's a possibility, because there is a remote chance that Trump could get that magic number of delegates? Do you believe that it is more likely to go to brokered or contested convention rather than Trump getting those delegates outright?
Yeah, it'll go to a brokered. It won't even be. He'll probably be a good at least 150 delegates shy.
All right, and turning now to Bill McMorris, the ousted Bill McMorris. I know that he is very sad about this. He's so sad. The decision was made right before the show when he logged on and did not even have a coat on. I may not have the shirt and tie, but at least I brought a coat. So that's kind of what ultimately brought Bill out here. Bill, you know, you're in Washington, D.C., the land of our fathers and the most evil place on earth. Second only, well, no, it probably beats out Las Vegas. What do you feel, you know, going forward with the way this race is shaping up?
Is that your actual question?
I don't have a question. I'm just trying to throw you off.
What a shitty moderator. Crappy host. I would have asked something sweet. I don't know, man.
Okay, great answer, Bill. I've now muted you. Let's go to Jeff.
Thank you.
Jeff, you know, what are your thoughts with the race shaping up the way it is, and it looks like we're going to have a very, very strongly contested convention. What do you see coming out?
First of all, I think that's a little glib. I'm going to just stand here and say that it is not at all a guarantee at this point that we will get to a contested convention. It is entirely possible that Trump could still make it to 1237 votes. It's also possible that Trump could get close to 1237 votes, but then the missing delegates that he needs would be supplied to him by none other than John Judas Kasich. So we have that problem to keep under mind. I don't really know what the outcome of the convention is. I think it's far too glib to just assume that Cruz will be the answer. I think he probably has a certain moral claim on it as the highest-ranking anti-Trump, but that's really going to depend on how he performs in subsequent primaries. I do kind of side with Neal. I feel for Neal. I feel the same way Neal does. You know, I liked Marco Rubio a lot. I got made fun of this, especially by certain mainstream media people who I wish I could throw under the bus right now, but it would seem cruel and ungrateful, for saying that I thought Marco Rubio was among the best of us. I thought he was among the best politicians that we've seen in recent years, and I'm not normally one who has very much good to say about politicians because they're all basically in it for themselves. But I admire Marco Rubio a lot, and I liked him a lot, and seeing him lose the way he did, even though I think a lot of it was of his own doing, still hurt. I'm glad to see that he's endorsing Cruz, or will be soon, because it's the responsible thing to do. I am not at all certain that that's going to put Cruz over the top. I sure as hell hope it does, but I think we're putting the cart way ahead of the horse by assuming we're necessarily on the way to a brokered convention just yet.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Bill and give him another question, one that could be better this time. Bill, today is St. Patrick's Day. You are wearing your green. I'm assuming that you are already about 11 or 12 sheets to the wind at this point. You are also a member of the media, which means you could get credentialed for the Republican National Convention. Would you be drunker tonight here on St. Patrick's Day or at the Republican National Convention?
Oh, tough one. I did get thrown out of a Buffalo Wild Wings at the DNC a couple years back. So yeah, I could see myself just losing it at the convention. I'm not sure if they would send me, to be honest. I'm more the type of force of nature that they send to the DNC, you know, so that we can drive up their arrest rates. So, broker convention, I don't know, man. I think it would be fun, you know. In the moment, it would be very fun. So yeah, I would probably be drunk, but when you consider the consequences of what a brokered convention would produce, or even worse, a Trump convention, it takes a little bit of the sting out of it. Yeah, so I predict nothing but, I mean, what else are you going to do in Cleveland, right? It's literal biggest tourist attraction is what's that place called? It's the highest density bar population in the world. They have like 400 bars in 1 square block. That's their biggest thing. So, yeah, Cleve. I don't know, man. I don't know what anyone's gonna do.
Wait. You know, I have to say, I understand urban density fairly well, and I'm amazed at the idea of there being 400 bars in one square block. One block. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, like each bar is like one person size. Like you can fit one guy in there.
Hold on, man. I'll get it. Maybe it's 1 square mile.
I think that might make more sense.
Quarters. No, it's totally whatever. I'll figure it out.
So now I've got a new idea, and that is, guys, I think we should pool our money and we should buy an apartment building and open a bar in each apartment, and that way we could break that 400 bars per square block record that Cleveland has set. We'll discuss that after the show in our GOPE cabal meeting that Bill and I are still on for, despite the fact that he and I are currently at odds over control of the show. Turning it back over to Neal. Neal, we've got, this, horrible travesty, and to make things even worse, John Kasich is still a thing that is happening to both the Republican Party and to America. What are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts on John Kasich?
Yes.
Well, from what I understand, he's an asshole. Everyone that I've spoken to who actually lives in Ohio has told me that his nice guy shtick is just that, a shtick. It's not his real personality. He's really deeply cynical, bitter. I learned just a few minutes ago that he actually goes to an Anglican church, not Catholic. I thought he was Catholic, so I like him even less.
He converted. He converted.
From Catholicism?
But he's an apostate. And you're like, can we trust this guy? No.
This fucking guy. I mean, I hate everything about him. I mean, his haircut is also stupid, and I know that's rich coming from me, but he has a bad haircut. It's not right for his age. As an older gentleman,
he is the haircut of a 7-year-old on the body of a 67-year-old.
Yeah, it doesn't look right. Okay, so there are not many things I like about Kasich. The least of which is the fact that he is essentially running for Trump's vice president. He has played spoiler all along in this process, and I think the sad thing is that he'll probably be rewarded for that by playing a kingmaker role at the convention if we go to one, which I don't think we will. I think that Trump will probably end up taking it, and that'll be due in no small part to the efforts of John Kasich.
All right, well, let's use that to introduce kind of the next question here, and that's the fact that the Never Trump movement is turning into an actual political play, either to consolidate around Ted Cruz or launch a third-party bid. This is a pretty big development, and just to tell you the level of distaste for Donald Trump, you have Jason Hart of Ohio, you should follow him at Jason A. Hart on Twitter, saying that he actually went out to vote John Kasich, a man he despises even more than the rest of this panel combined. And you have Lindsey Graham endorsing Ted Cruz. These are pretty big anti-Trump developments. Add to that the likes of former Red State Dear leader Eric Erickson and other notable names in conservative grassroots movement holding meetings and other donors holding meetings saying, okay, what do we got to do to set up not just a possible third-party bid if no consolidation around Cruz? How do we fund it? How do we get somebody on the ballot? Now,
these guys have been so successful. Are you telling me that a group of conservative politicians, journalists, pollsters, and donors are getting together to defeat Trump? Now it'll work. Are you kidding me? Like the Never Trump folks are getting on my nerves just as much as the Trump folks. Like, it started off and I was like, haha, Rick Wilson's making great dick jokes about Donald Trump. And then they release their ads, and it's like a bunch of boring women whining. I mean, we've run a general election campaign basically to defeat Mitt Romney in 2012. We sat there and we went, hey, this is the ammunition that works so well against us in the past, so it'll have to work for us in the primary. You know, so we're just like, we'll paint him as anti-woman. We'll make a big deal out of Megyn Kelly and mean tweets, and obviously this will be enough to doom his candidacy. And none of it's worked. I have no confidence in the Never Trump movement. They proved themselves to be laughably inefficient and ineffective.
So, going with that, I want to turn it now over to Kyle. Kyle, you again being on the ground in Florida, you were there for the horrible underperformance of Marco Rubio and the tremendously horrible overperformance of Donald Trump. Do the normal political rules, do the normal rules of politics no longer apply, or do we just have the 2-year-old child who doesn't like the rules and is changing them as he goes, and things will revert after the Trump era is over?
No, there are no rules. There is just anarchy and fire. That's all we get. No, you got the point where his supporters are out yelling at people to go back to Auschwitz or go to Auschwitz. So you're not. There is nothing that matters at all. It's all a joke. And being here in Florida, I've seen people I know people who were hardcore for Rubio on Monday, and then on Tuesday went out and voted Donald Trump just because they didn't care anymore. So the whole thing's become a joke. I want to take it seriously because it matters and it's important, but I also just want to sit back and say, let it burn, and I have no part in this at all. I'm leaving, and I want nothing to do with this.
All right, Jeff, going over to you. We have today, I think it was, seeing the story that David Duke is praising Donald Trump for actually making Adolf Hitler possibly look like a better person historically. If the media is comparing Donald Trump to Hitler, then it's the chance to redeem Hitler's image. What are your thoughts on David Duke, my state which produced David Duke, and the fact that you are making jerk-off motions on camera, breaking a new barrier for BATF past just the usual swearing? We are now.
I've done that on at least 5 different episodes you weren't around for. Trust me.
But not on the Joe Cunningham era, the cleaner, safer era. I'm kidding. You can straight up tell people directly.
Here, I'm going to do the really disturbing slow jab.
But see, that is very over-exaggerated for the Donald Trump.
Stop doing it, Jeff. Stop it. Nobody likes that. That's not good.
Boy, this kid, Yes! That's what that was from. It's the only funny thing they ever did. Listen, I don't have a
untrue
to say about
pizza bagel. Look up pizza bagel.
No.
Okay, that is a secondary thing. Let me go back to the actual point here. I don't have a thing to say about David Duke, and I don't have anything to say about Donald Trump, except actually I want to take issue with something Kyle said just a few seconds ago, where he said, he had, or actually no, it wasn't Kyle, it was Bill, saying he had no confidence in the Never Trump movement because what the heck have they ever accomplished? And I might be willing to grant the point, except I'd also like to point out how outgunned this movement was from the outset. These people are people of principle. They're usually pundits who have smaller megaphones, cannot compete with the big conservative media talkers, people like the Rush Limbaughs, Mark Levin's, Sean Hannity's, Laura Ingram's of the world, or Fox News for that matter, or the other cable networks who I went on a long rant about this. I basically haven't done anything else today, and then I got done with my work, and I just spewed bile all over the internet about how horribly complicit the media has been about allowing the rise of Trump. It's probably nothing that you guys haven't heard before, so I'll spare you. But to talk as if the Never Trump people have been, ineffective or pointless or useless up until this point in time, well, what the hell did they have to work with? All right, the only time and place they can ever actually have an effect that will matter is, one, in unifying and in consolidating anti-Trump support in the primary votes, but failing that, doing their black magic and understanding how delegate allocation and delegate rules work in the GOP convention. So I don't really think it's fair to say, like, oh, well, fat lot of good you did. What the heck were they supposed to do? They were the Polish cavalry facing off against, the Nazi blitzkrieg in 1939. I don't really blame them for that.
The one thing I'll give Bill a little bit of credit for, and I do kind of agree with you, but the fact that this whole thing just started 2 weeks ago and not 6 months ago, from very few people were that outspoken 6 months ago. It just started recently. Everybody started really caring about it, and if it would have happened months ago, we wouldn't be at this point. We would already have a nominee by now. It would be over. and we wouldn't be trying to figure out who's going to burn things down the least.
Yeah, well, the thing is that we were never going to be able to do that because Drudge Report threw in with Trump immediately, and that meant that talk radio was going to throw in with whatever Drudge told them to do, which meant that the cable news networks, all these people who are plummeting ratings, they are bleeding viewers and listeners, they all went with the biggest get for their ratings, for their networks and their radio shows, meant we were always rolling the ball uphill. We always have had our work cut out for us, and this is actually the great betrayal. I could write a book about this. I won't, because nobody wants to listen to what I write.
I love that we have gone from the lamestream liberal media to the corporate media, guys, the corporate media and their corporation-y behavior. Gosh.
I don't, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that the profit motive and the market motive is a very real one. And the thing is I will admit it, I hold conservative media to a much higher standard, frankly, than I hold the so-called mainstream media. And you know why I do that? Because they're supposed to be on my damn side. That's why I do that. I actually have expectations for them. I expect the mainstream media to basically, I'm going to be blunt here, I expect them to fuck me every chance they get. And every time they don't, I'm pleasantly surprised. What I don't expect that from is from Fox News, although I do now, and I certainly didn't expect it from somebody like Rush Limbaugh, or particularly somebody who spent his entire career defining himself as a holier-than-thou ultra-conservative like Mark Levin or Laura Ingraham. Those people have no answers to give as to why they allowed Trump to happen, except ratings.
Well, yeah, you're right about that. I mean, but that's been the case forever. They have always been motivated by ratings. What they do is they keep people angry, and when they're angry, they don't think. They tune in for a dose of outrage. They tune in to have their prejudices reconfirmed every single day. Because people like to hear things that they already think. So when Levin and Rush and Ingram and all these other people are touting Donald Trump as, he's saying some interesting things, blah, 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 blah. I mean, they've been doing this for years. They've been doing it for their entirety of their careers. In fact, much of the conservative media is built around that model. It's built around telling people what they want to hear and having them self-select the news that they consume. I mean, we're not absorbing news. We're consuming the news. We are consumers. I mean, it's like, do you like Cheetos or do you like Utz cheese doodles? It's the same shit.
No, it's not. No,
well,
it's not.
I know. See, I know. Utz is better, but.
Terrible opinions.
No. Yeah, but that is wrong.
Utz is greasier. Utz has more grease to it. Cheetos is too dry.
The only thing that Utz does better is sourdough pretzels.
Hear me out. Hear me out. If we could have the Utz doodle, but the Cheeto powder, that would be the ideal. Anyway, the point is that
Neal, you just killed our first corporate sponsorship.
I know, right? They've been running a con on us for the last 25 years or so, and nobody has really wanted to admit it because a lot of people wanted to get in on it. In fact, I would say the vast majority of the people that you read on blogs have been wanting to get in on this. That's why so many people didn't criticize Fox News when it was obvious that they were soft-pedaling all of Trump's criticism. You know why? They wanted to get on Fox News at some point. They wanted to be on TV because that means money, that means exposure, that means eyeballs. That's really what it is. Everyone has been driven by this. Everyone. You, me, everybody.
Hang on. I want to say one thing. One thing is that it has been profoundly liberating for my own conscience and my own political commentary to realize early on that I was far too ugly to ever appear on television. That way, I never had to worry about compromising my beliefs.
Wait, are you telling me that I could have made money off of saying nice things about Mr. Trump?
Well, Neal is the one who really sold his career out.
Mr. Trump is a great guy. I like Mr. Trump.
I mean, Neal is the one who really gave up, man. I mean, because you had something to lose. You're a handsome man. But I
told people that I would sell out in a heartbeat, but nobody ever took me up on it.
Well, see here, let's notice that the Mr. Trump compliments came from the only person on this panel who has actually appeared on Fox News. So we do need to have that disclosure out there. And speaking of mainstream media and the conservative media selling out, let's go back to the Koch-funded, and I mean that in both the mega donor and the drug reference, Koch funded Bill McMorris for a little bit more on how the conservative media has let us down.
Well, yeah, the whole model of, striking out into the talk radio circuit instead of doing what the Free Beacon did, which is being a warmongering Kate Upton blog and taking CIA cocaine money to keep us afloat, is that we sleep better at night, or I should say in twilight, than every other form of media out there. In terms of the radio guys, I think you guys are a bit off. They started walking back even before Iowa. Rush started walking back, and I guess the whole argument that's going around now, and I read that article from on Mediaite about how all these radio guys were culpable and Drudge was culpable, and I will say this. I mean, Drudge has been running a weirdly anti-Christian, pro-Trump type angles recently. It's a very weird dynamic that's at play there. I mean, the way they handled Ted Cruz just getting blessed was
the laying
ridiculous.
on of hands. Ted Cruz's father speaking in tongues and all that.
Yeah, and just calling out pastors for being against
Oh, by the way,
but
to be fair,
it was very, very weird to see that sort of thing appear on Drudge, and it's been happening for months. About the only Cruz supporter who gets good Drudge mentions these days is Bruce Jenner. But of course, they featured prominently today how Bruce Jenner has recanted after the auto-da-fe was complete. So I don't know. It's been a weird thing happening at Drudge, and I'm not sure. A lot of people lay this at his feet, but it could just as easily be the two people who handle the grunt work for him during the days now, while he just sits back and collects the money. I don't know.
Now,
please still link to me, Drudge. I like your.
Now, Kyle, you've been exceedingly polite in waiting your turn, which is just frankly foolish behavior for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends. So let's get your input here. As somebody who is working at a media publication yourself, OUTSET Magazine, being somebody who works with a medium, and you're kind of a guy somewhat on the inside. We all do some work in some different medium. Never mind, because Kyle Foley just left, so that completely threw off that question. So instead, let me just say that as somebody who worked in talk radio and having listened to Rush Limbaugh and being forced to listen to Sean Hannity for years, I find very little that's actually surprising in the way that Sean Hannity is behaving, and things that are completely expected from Limbaugh, Levin, and all those, where they get right to the brink and saying, well, maybe, and then they start walking it back. Whereas Hannity has jumped the line and gone completely and, oh, hell yeah. But the big problem here, and this is what I want to go to Kyle about, is these guys, the Hannitys, the Breitbarts, the Laura Ingrams, these guys who are going full bore for Trump at this point, are they going to lose support, money, viewership, listenership if Trump fails?
No. They're going to gain it, because here's the thing, when Trump fails, because he will, no matter what happens at this point, we're going to have a Democrat in the White House. No matter anything that we do, it doesn't matter. We're going to have Hillary Clinton, or by the grace of Cthulhu, maybe Bernie Sanders. And so we're going to get to the point where they're going to make all this money because it's just going to be about, oh my God, look how horrible the liberals are. We could have had it better. And so everybody's going to come back and start paying attention to them, and it's going to be the same thing all over again. It's just going to be back to what it was when Obama started, and it's going to be everyone's coming back and flocking back to pay attention to them, and in a year everyone will forget what happened with Donald Trump.
All right, now going over to you, Neal. Before we do that, Joe, actually I want to make a serious point here. Actually taking issue with what you said, like, you see Rush Limbaugh sort of walking the line, but then he walks it back. First of all, I think that that's sucker's game because he knows full well what kind of impression he's making on his viewers who take the first half.
I don't disagree with you at all there.
But I also want to contrast it with the way he reacted to Pat Buchanan back in 1996. Now, I don't want to sound like an old man here, but you might be too young to remember this. I remember it well because I was 16 years old and a young Republican at the time. When Pat Buchanan was threatening Bob Dole, and in fact when he was threatening George H.W. Bush in 1992, Rush Limbaugh's reaction was not to say, like, oh, well, this is the authentic populist voice of America, blah-de-fucking-blah. No, his reaction was to say populism is not conservatism, and he was extremely clear on this. He minced no words about it, and he made no bones about it. Now, suddenly, he seems to have conflated these two things. And I ask myself, well, why is this happening now when it didn't happen back then, even though it is exactly the same test case, right up to the point where Pat Buchanan is one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters? Why is it happening? Here's why. Look at Rush Limbaugh's Arbitron ratings over the past 5 years. He has been hemorrhaging listeners. They have all been hemorrhaging listeners. The only guys who haven't lost major listeners, ironically enough, are Hugh Hewitt and John Batchelor, who always had a niche group anyway. All right? Everyone else has been losing them in droves. So what might possibly explain why all those previous principles seem to go suddenly out the window? I don't think it has anything to do with any sort of behavior. I think Limbaugh is actually actively being a hypocrite. He is going back on what he had previously promised implicitly us he would stand for. And I'm pissed about it. And I'm sorry. I'm done. I'll quit now.
Excellent, because I was tired of you anyway. Let's shift it over to Neal. What are your thoughts on the conservative media more or less capitulating to a lifelong Democrat and Democratic donor with Democratic values?
Not happy about it, Joe, I've got to say. I did expect better from certain people. I don't listen to talk radio. I don't actually watch cable news. I'm one of those 8 million people a night who watches NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. So I stay out of all that because to me it's always just been about kind of making people upset and angry and not really getting into any kind of real analysis of the issues quite often. So I am not happy. I am not surprised because, again, I do believe this is part of their business model. And so I think that in order to keep eyeballs on them or to keep listeners, they'll say whatever it is that they need to say, just as Jeff was explaining. It's a business model. It really is. And that's what we have to understand this to be. It's business for these people. It's their bread and butter. So they're going to chase listeners, and if the listeners happen to be a bunch of racist, populist Trump supporters, well, they're going to cater to them as much as they can. I mean, they don't have to worry about being denounced in the media. That is part of the appeal, which is another big problem, I think, with conservative media and the media in general, is that we've gotten into this tribal mentality where it's us versus them, where there's no ability to discuss any kind of issue with any sort of eye towards a real solution. It's always stake out a position on the extreme, and if you deviate from that in the slightest bit, you're squish, which is not helpful. It's not a way to do anything. It's certainly not a way to run the country, as we found out when Cruz went to the Senate, tried and failed to overturn Obamacare by shutting down the government. Disastrous failure. Somehow he got credit for that. But, you know, that's just because everybody who was watching was maybe a little bit primed by decades of conservative media casting noble failure as something to be pursued.
All right. I want to switch gears a little bit. We've been talking about we talked about the fall of Marco Rubio. We talked about the rise of Donald Trump. What we haven't talked about is how feeling the burn has become an annoying itch down in the trousers as Hillary has started to gain the momentum that she needs to pretty much solidify. In fact, Bernie Sanders conceding the race in Missouri today. Going to you first, Jeff, you being the decision desk guy on the panel, and since I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention through the tears I was crying into my drink of choice that night, in watching the close races, I know you were focusing on Illinois, but as Missouri just kept going back and forth and back and forth, I mean, what were you guys thinking? What were you guys saying at the decision desk? Like, holy crap, how's this going to go?
Well, okay, here's the thing. I was genuinely surprised at how close the Illinois Democratic race was, and how close both races on Missouri were, and North Carolina. And that's the funny thing about Trump. Trump won one major blowout, which everyone expected him to win in Florida, and then he got his ass kicked in a thing that honestly I expected to happen too in Ohio. I think most people did as well. But in Missouri, I had picked Ted Cruz to be the sleeper winner, and it's so agonizing looking at those numbers. He was 2,000 votes away from winning statewide, and he was like 200 votes in two separate districts from stealing another 10 delegates. And I can see Neal doing his slow jacking motion.
Maybe if he was a better presidential candidate and had tried harder, he would have gotten those votes. That's what I was told about Marco Rubio not winning, so maybe Cruz should have just tried harder.
It's the face. It's the face. It killed it for him.
Well, you know what? I don't disagree with any of the points you're making, but I'm strictly, from my point of view at this late date, looking at it from an anti-Trump perspective. So I just asked myself what would have been the best possible outcome to prevent Trump from getting more delegates, and it's agonizing to watch him fall short by that small amount. But yeah, it probably would have been better off not, going to Ohio and making a campaign stop there, and it was entirely futile. You're right. There are reasons that he might have had to do that anyway if he wanted to be the nominee at the end of the game, because you have to spend some time running a game in Florida or Ohio if you want to win a national election. But nevertheless, the real point is that Bernie Sanders' campaign, it was over a while ago. It's definitely over now. He didn't win a single race. He should have won Missouri. He could have won Illinois. He got his ass kicked in Ohio, which is a state he should have done much better in because it's so industrial. But no, it's over for him, and that's all she wrote. I mean, even you saw the stories about Obama is actually now telling people privately, yeah, it's done. It's time to unite behind Hillary, which is funny because you would have thought he might have said that a little earlier. But no, I guess he really doesn't have much love lost for Hillary. But yeah, it was all it was a nice dream while you had it, Bernie fans. That's all you get.
He's not. Here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. The Democratic Party is actually going to be more divided than the Republican Party come November. One of the things I do...
hell no, man. I got to disagree with you there.
No, okay. Well, then I work on college campuses every day. My job is literally going and talking to students about this kind of stuff. I have not met a single Bernie Sanders supporter that will vote for Hillary. I have met a bunch of them that have said they will go vote for Trump or whoever the Republican nominee is to stop Hillary Clinton, which to us sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's the same thing as when I say I'd vote for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump, and I get people telling me to go kill myself on Twitter. It's literally the same thing. You've got this idea of they hate her so much that they will go for people that are absolutely against everything they stand for just to stop her.
How certain are you that is an actual conviction or it's mere bluster? Because it reminds me of the Pumas from 2008. Remember them? Party unity, my ass. These are the people that were angry that Hillary had been denied the nomination. Women, usually. And they said, well, I'm going to vote for McCain, especially when she picked Palin. Oh, I'm going to vote for them instead. Well, that didn't really work out,
Well, there's a big difference there, Jeff, and that difference is skin tone. Back to you, Kyle.
I think. Well, I mean, obviously Democrats are racist. That's the easiest one. No, I think the hatred is real. I think it's a lot different than it was in 2008. I'm only making an assumption because I was like 6 at the time. So, but the hate. They really cannot stand her. I've seriously not talked to a single one, even ones I know.
I might have to vote for Hillary in that case.
But my quibbling with that, Kyle, is that the key difference is, and I see what you're going, and this is actually one of the things I like about Bernie staying in the race, is the more it seems like super delegates have and party infrastructure have handed the race over to Hillary Clinton, the more we can try to get that narrative out every time if we do have a broker convention, every time the media says, hey, because the media has already started, going for the foment here, create a slow burn now so that when it happens, if a broker convention happens, it bursts and all the Trump people really do stay home. And we're going to try to counter that, of course, by saying superdelegates handed the nomination to Hillary Clinton, the establishment did that. The problem is that with young people, a lot of these people turning out for Bernie Sanders are the type of young people who cannot be counted on to turn out come election day. So how many voters is Hillary really going to lose out to from the Feel the Burn crowd? Probably not that many. Now, the difference is for Republicans, and I think this is why so many campaigns, especially Ted Cruz's, and it ended up being a smart strategy, were unwilling to attack Trump in the early going, is because Trump was engaging a particular sect of voters that Republicans have been dying to turn out in recent years, that being the Rust Belt the Rust Belt Reagan Democrats in Pennsylvania and Ohio that we thought would help deliver us to freedom. So that's why they were so unwilling to engage Trump. Now, if you're comparing those guys to young people in each coalition, I think the Democrats will lose a lot less of their voter base that they need to win than Republicans would if say we use a broker convention to prevent a Trump nomination. So that's those. I guess that's why I find it an inapt, although necessary, tactic. We will have to say this on every Sunday show in the hopes that we can discourage just a few college students from voting. The other thing, and this is an idea that Matthew Walther has of the Washington Free Beacon has touted for years, is that instead of all the Republican billionaires pouring money into super PACs, they should just go and pay entertainers like Jay-Z and Beyonce to hold concerts on Election Day free of charge at college campuses all across the country. But the thing is, there's no re-entry, and it starts at 5 a.m. So they all have to show up, and they won't be able to vote. That's, I think, really the last hope that we have if we go third party, is just to hold free concerts all over the country. These are artists, and before you say, hey, Beyonce and Jay-Z are dedicated liberal activists, they would never do this, keep in mind that these people have played for dictators like Muammar Gaddafi for millions of dollars. Yeah, they play for Sheldon Adelson for a couple $1 million, do an 8-hour concert. I say we do it. I say we use these guys.
You'd only need to peel off like what 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 kids who wouldn't vote. That could make a big difference in some key races.
Now I would go back to you here in a sec, Neal, because something you were mentioning in the exclusive BATF chat that we have to the side of the actual panel is the fact that there's something about this year, in your words, where everybody is just vindictive as all hell toward the party establishment. Establishment is a word that is being tossed around, and I think, frankly, has lost its meaning at this point. But establishment is a word that's being used now on both sides of the aisle. We never used to hear the word establishment when it came to the Democratic Party, but now the Democratic establishment tried to set up debates that would favor Hillary Clinton on off nights when nobody would be watching. The superdelegates are all going to Hillary whether or not she actually wins the state or wins it by a vast majority. So I think this year, and kind of going with what Kyle's saying, and knowing the people that I know, the people who normally don't give a crap about politics except to say that the Republicans are just absolutely evil, now those same people are the ones who are turning out the highest quality memes that support Bernie Sanders.
Right.
These are people who never really supported Democrats so much as they attacked Republicans. If they're out there actually advocating for a preferred Democrat and one who is seen as anti-establishment, I see that as being a potential game changer. Neal?
I agree with that to an extent. I have been thinking about the ways that this year feels different from previous elections that I've gone through. You know, we always, just in the Republican Party, we always tear each other to pieces, and then we try to make nice, even if we're not terribly happy with, you know, Mitt Romney or John McCain or whatever. We try to do that. But this year, just I feel like there's been a real sundering. We are divided in a way that we have not been before. And I don't think it's something that we can repair at all. I think that this is a permanent split. I think that what we are going to see is a group of people in the Republican Party break off entirely and just not come back. That, to me, is not a good sign. I don't think the Democrats will have quite the same problem, because the Democrats are generally a little bit more disciplined when it comes to that, pulling down, you know, pulling ranks, that sort of thing. Yeah. I'm kind of distracted by that noise on your end there, Joe. There we go. Okay, well now I don't have an excuse.
I thought that was your open window, Joe.
No.
It sounded like an ultrasound.
Yeah.
It was pretty sweet. Kyle, you know nothing about this.
I'm surprised I was able to make even that much of a coherent point. But I do think that we're seeing something a little bit different this year. I do think that the general tone, I do think that the emphasis on our differences, and in a real way, some of the things where Ted Cruz, for instance, I'm not harping on Ted Cruz, but I'm saying that he looks at taking fourth place in the D.C. primary as a selling point, because he's running on this idea that, well, a large segment of the party hates me, but all the right people hate me. You hate those people too. We don't want them to like me. We don't want them to vote for me. Yeah, you do. You kind of do. So he is running as a divisive candidate rather than as somebody who's trying to unite the party. It's something that's different. I don't know, Kyle. What do you think about that?
We all run as divisive candidates, though. The entire point of our two-party system is to be divisive. If Cecil Richards endorsed whoever,
no, Bill, that's stupid.
I'm talking intra-party.
Yes, exactly.
You're talking intra-party. I still disagree. I want to see my wing of the party beat Whit Ayers' wing of the party.
If
Whit Ayers wants to stamp me out of the party. This is the problem with a big tent when you don't run on a client state platform.
Mm-hmm. But I think what we're seeing is people
God rest his soul, wants to see, my ideas defeated. I want to see his ideas defeated. And a certain segment of people are always going to stay home. The problem with Trump is that the intellectual wing of the party is going to stay home. And the problem with a broker convention is that the base is going to stay home, which is why I think,
well, this kind of leads me to my real belief, which is that nothing we do will actually help, and that we've already lost. We're mortally wounded, and it's like the 5-point exploding heart technique from Kill Bill. 5-point palm exploding heart technique, or something like that. Yeah, so you take 5 steps and you explode. But
hey, you know what? You know what though? Being mortally wounded is when many combat medals have been earned. Perhaps it's time to start reinforcing that principle again.
Well, no, I have a better principle to reinforce. If we are mortally wounded indeed, as Neal suggests, certainly for this election, then the only question left remaining, if we have clarity, if we're not living in delusion, is what's the best possible thing to do at this point? And I say I would rather lose with dignity than lose with disgrace, or to win with disgrace. I will blow the party up. I will blow the party up happily if it prevents Trump from happening. And I don't care how many angry base voters there are. I will, I will school them in the meaning of loss. All right, I don't care. That's how angry I am, and I'm probably not being entirely rational at this point, but I have to not be.
I mean, the basis one complaint is that we have been schooling them in the meaning of loss for years.
No. I mean real loss. I mean pain. I don't mean losing elections.
Terrorism? I'm down for terrorism.
I am going to teach them that things that they think that they have earned and think that they can have, they can't have, and they will not get. Because they don't understand power. They don't understand how power is wielded. I want them to learn that. To not be such sucker fucking rubes as to think that merely earning 1,237 delegates entitles you to a nomination. If the smarter and more educated people of the party say no, you will destroy us. I want them to learn. At this point, I am angry enough to say that whatever the sins of the Republican Party elite, and they are many, they are great, and they must be attended to at some point as well, but whatever their sins, they are not greater than the sins of those backing Donald Trump, and I do so solemnly believe that. And I'm ranting at this point, so I'll shut the fuck up.
All right. First of all, guys, Ultrasound's over. It's boys. Yes, I said boys. Anyway, so in kind of going on this route and talking about this insurgency or going through terrorism, as Bill McMorris has so openly advocated for this evening, I want to take that opportunity and go to Kyle now. Kyle, I want you to add your thoughts, kind of this idea of blowing the party up. You mentioned fire, you mentioned anarchy. Out of the ruins, what do we get?
Well, first of all, I just want to say, if only there was a candidate that was saying he would love all Americans, even the ones who hated him. If there was someone who, I mean, it's a shame we didn't get that. We just got all this hate, but whatever. I don't know what we're going to see out of this. I don't know what the hell is going to happen. One of the things and Neal kind of made this point too, it's not going to go back to the way it was like it does every other election, because every other election everybody hates each other and then it's over and we shake hands, we vote Republican in November, then the last few times we've lost and we've gone home. This time we're going to lose. Every side in some way is going to lose something, and we're going to be looking here in November like, what the hell just happened? What do we do from here? And nobody's going to know what to do. We're going to have half of the party is split, half of the party is gone. Hopefully the intellectual part of the party is still together, whether it's outside of the party or whether it's together in the party. But there's nothing I can look at and say, okay, this is what's going to happen when it's over, because ever since Donald Trump has entered the race, it's just been such a clusterfuck of nobody knows what's going to happen. And all conventional wisdom is out the window.
All right, so what we're going to do these last few minutes is we're going to go into a series of lightning round questions, starting with first, Bill, if you could find a creative way to not only eject John Kasich from the race, but also from this mortal coil, how would you do it?
Gosh. I know that I proposed this question, but I didn't have an answer for it. I would, jeez.
I have an answer. If Bill
you know what? I would sentence him to death, and then maybe he would convert back to Catholicism because we oppose the death penalty. That would be it. I'd save his soul.
Joy.
I would have him buried under a mountain of letters delivered straight from the United States Post Office. I thought it would be a very poetic thing, since he would go out the way that his father lived.
Kyle.
Oh, yeah. Just sit on a pyre made of lost mail and then light it on fire.
Bill, shut up. Kyle, go.
Oh, God. I'd sentence him to spending a week at a brony convention. That's kind of the worst that could happen for a man.
Wait.
You're supposed to help this man, escort him off the mortal coil.
Fate worse than death, Jeff.
No, but Kyle, would he somehow meet his end at a brony convention? And here's the more fun part: you got to tell me how he would die at a brony convention, because I can tell you there are a lot of creative ways a man could go at one.
Okay, I have not told you where the brony convention is taking place. This year, it's taking place in Syria.
I'm sold.
It's an ISIS brony unification meeting, and he's just caught in the middle of it. And at some point, an ISIS agent operative dressed as a brony will end up murdering him with his fuzzy paws.
All right, Neal, same question for you.
I would give John Kasich a hug on the lip of an active volcano, and then we would both go in.
And for me, it would be a jousting tournament where his only weapon is probably a golf club, and instead of a regular horse, one of those little toy horses with the horse head on a stick. Next lightning round question. This time we will start with Neal. Neal, if you could have one ideal candidate walk up and punch Donald Trump in the face and take his spot, who would it be?
Marco Rubio.
Kyle.
But I would ask him to dick punch Trump first.
Okay. Kyle.
I mean, I want to say Rubio, but that's not creative enough because that was my guy. So I'm going to go with Morgan Freeman.
Fantastic. Jeff.
It's clear that the only answer could be Kevin Kline from Dave.
That is not the only... You're right, that is the only answer. The only answer that would be wrong. Bill.
James Mad Dog Mattis.
Fantastic. Let's see.
Wait, I gotta ask, who the hell is that?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I gotta ask.
Who the hell is Kevin Kline?
Kevin Kline, the actor?
He's an actor.
No, he's not.
Kevin
What has he been
Kline
in?
is like Kevin Spacey for a more
A Fish
civilized
Called
time.
Wanda.
What?
A Fish Called Wanda.
You've never seen a Fish Called Wanda.
I have never heard of. This is a movie?
Neal, I don't know if you're kidding, but if you haven't seen A Fish Called Wanda, it was basically made for your comedic
Wait a minute.
sensibility.
Was Kevin Kline in the Prairie Home Companion movie?
I never saw that because I don't like,
He was in Wild Wild West.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the white guy. He was not Will Smith in Wild
Oh,
Wild
I
West.
saw that. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, James Mad Dog Mattis. James Mad Dog Mattis is a Marine general. Basically, he's Patton for the modern era. He's the one who got into all sorts of trouble and was eventually ousted from the military by Obama because of being too much of a Marine. I think my favorite anecdote is he met with a bunch of tribal leaders to help win over Sunni support to help the surge, and he met with them and said, "You see me now. I came without artillery, but if you fuck with me, people will talk about what I did to you for 1,000 years." That's the type of man we need handling our foreign policy. So that's just everyone Google James Mad Dog Mattis or James Chaos Mattis, and look at this man. He is phenomenal.
All right, and last lightning round question of the evening. Neal, who would you rather as host, me or Bill?
Well, Joe, because I think you've kind of locked up this brokered convention thing, I think I'm going to stick with you. Just, Bill speaks to me in a lot of ways, but the elites have spoken. I think that I appreciate the process here.
Kyle, you're new here, but I'll give you a chance to answer as well.
I think it's time we take away the power from the Washington cartel and the abuse under Bill McMorris. So I think it's time for Trusted Joe to take over.
Jeff.
Well, I'm going to be the John Kasich of the group, and I'm going to suggest that if I can't host it, because I should be the host, but if I can't host it, I'm going to throw my vote and my delegates behind Bill McMorris he's the Donald Trump.
And that is it for Jeff, everybody. Bill, what is your answer to this question?
Well, considering the fact that we just heard a crash, which is obviously Leon Wolf in your closet, I will have to say I, too, support Joe, because I promised to endorse whoever won the host race.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends. This has been Joe Cunningham. I will be guiding us through the chaos that is 2016 before hanging myself at the very last episode of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends to be announced at a later date. Good night, everybody, and I hope that you have somewhat of a blessed day. And remember, F. Bill McMorris, and I don't mean that as his first name. Thank you, and good night.